Well, welcome. You have reached Association Chat, an online discussion for the association community, where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire with topics of the day, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the community. I'm the host of Association Chat, Kiki L'Italien, and today we are talking about collaborating with our competitors. Sometimes that works out well, sometimes it doesn't work out so well. When is it a good idea, and when is it a not so good idea? Competitive collaboration can help you boost profits. It can improve brand awareness. It can attract your target audience and much, much more. But it isn't always easy. And many people shy away from it because of that. We may have two guests for today. We originally had one guest scheduled, and she had a last-minute situation arise, so she may or may not join us later. But for right now, we have the wonderful Tahira Endean, head of events for Society for Incentive Travel Excellence. SITE.
Yes.
So welcome. And look at this, guys. I am so impressed because I already have my lovely graphic that I was going to flash up.
I'm impressed.
So you guys, I know. This was like, man, 10 minutes like that. I was impressed too. I impressed myself. And so, yeah, I just want to go ahead and get started talking about this today. Reed, I see that you're saying hello. If you type in, by the way, over into the comments, we can bring up your comments occasionally. So do not be scared to do that. So competition, competitors, and collaborators, compatriots. Tahira, when have you seen this work?
Well, I see it work all the time. So working with SITE now, so this is, I've been doing events since the beginning of time, so sometime, 1993. And I've been with SITE for just over a year. But every event that we do, we are an event association, which means that we're always relying on partners. And we're relying, we take an event into a destination, we're bringing in a lot of buyers and all of the sponsor partners who make it work for us. And so we have the people that we bring, but then we have an entire destination that has to work to support it. And of course, it's a great showcase for many of those organizations, which means I might have one DMO, 3 DMCs, multiple hotels, transportation partners. And so it's quite often, it could be multiple hotels, multiple DMCs. They all work together and they figure out, who's going to take which night and who's going to do what part. And how can everybody essentially take that pie and share it? Now, in some cases, there's money on the table. And in some cases, sometimes it is actually, how are you going to work together because it's a marketing investment? So that's, which is a very different scenario. But really to do an event, I always look at, we go to events and they say, oh, it's going to be like a 2-to-1 supplier buyer ratio. And I think that's amazing if you're a partner who wants to talk to those buyers. But the reality is, having been an event designer, event producer, meeting planner for 25 years of my 27 years in the industry, I need 18 partners to do an event. And many of them are often going to be, competitors in their real life, because you're going to have multiple entertainment companies sometimes working on one program, or, again, multiple hotels, or, multiple caterers. And, you have to always look at the reason that you're choosing those people to work together. And then as the companies that are choosing to work on those programs as partners, you need to look at the bigger picture of, who am I playing to, basically, and who am I playing with? It's a pretty big sandbox, but, there's might only be one digger in the middle of that sandbox, and we all want that same digger, right? So
it's true. It's so true.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've all been in those situations, though, from the time that we're in grade school till the time that we, are out on our own with our own businesses, our own careers, where we have seen where where we have some kind of competition with, we're competitive with in one way or another, where sometimes that collaboration can work, but oftentimes it's more difficult. And so what do you think are some of the challenges and maybe some of the red flags that you run into in the beginning?
Well, the two big challenges in anything that we do, I think, are budget and ego.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, so it's if you're working to complete a project, you do need to set ego aside, because you have to just remain really focused on that end goal. And if budget is just, you know, ultimately it's, you know, sometimes I come in and I know exactly what I have to give a specific partner. Sometimes I have no idea, because it's going to shift and ebb and flow with what the program has. And, you know, so everybody wants to say, you know, I have, you know, let's just go $10,000 as just a number. I have $10,000 to do X. And some people would be like, okay, great. I need 8, so there's a profit. And some people would be like, oh, but I need 12, so I can't run that at a loss. Or I can only give you like this much, you know. So it's about how people value things. It's about how they value their time, their services, and their goods in some cases. And it's about, the biggest hurdle, I think, is not being able to have those open and transparent conversations. So it's, you know, because sometimes if I'm building a budget, I'm building it on blocks, you know, and those blocks are Tetris. And, you know, you're going to ultimately present something to a client that's going to have what looks like a whole cube, but it takes blocks to get there. And those blocks they are quite often going to be from competitors within an industry. At the end of the day, it's about how do we bring together the right partners. And let's use audiovisual as an example. So some audiovisual companies will tell you that they are, you know, production companies, content creators, builders of sets, and they provide all of the audiovisual projection, sound, lighting. Some companies will say, we only do sound, we specialize. And another company will say, we only do lighting. And somebody, you know, so it's about, you know, maybe I want to bring in an audiovisual company that can also build my set, but I really want to bring in another lighting designer, you know. So it's what's going to give you the best overall experience, and how do you then get them to work together as well, I think, is part of it.
There is definitely talk right now about organizations, whether it's associations or companies that, you know, provide services to associations. They're talking about, is this a time for what's called coopetition? Is this a time to explore even, you know, a full partnership, especially as we're looking at the economy and we're unsure of the future, and certainly when we're looking at the events side of things, and with so many large events that have been either postponed or have just been canceled. A lot of people are thinking, am I going to survive this as a company? You know, and so for those people who are out there trying to figure out, is this something I should consider? You know, what have you seen? Like, what should they be thinking about?
It's an imperative right now. Right now,
Right.
You cannot think, we're not doing anything right now that is going to be the same as we've done it before. We can't.
Yeah.
Because the business isn't there in the same way, you know. So 100% what we're seeing is, you know, many people, of course, are flipping to digital, virtual, hybrid, live, online, however we want to call those events by name. But the reality is that they require different suppliers. They require a modified skill set, and they don't carry the same value to a client, because you don't have food and beverage, you don't have hotel room buys, you don't have transportation. So all of the things that we would be typically making money on, either by charging a service fee for our time or by a commission or markup system, however people work on that doesn't exist. And so essentially we're down to about 15% of what our typical income would be, but we still need 80% of our staff to actually execute on that. So we don't have a good business model right now. You know, it's already kind of broken, and now it's obliterated.
Yeah.
So we need to find different ways of working together. We need to find different services that we can provide. We need to find, what do people need that we can do for them right now, and who do we need to do that with? And, you know, we've seen some really great examples of, you know, and I think, you know, the DMC sector, in particular, destination management companies, who are really reliant on, you know, incentive travel, as well as association, as well as corporate, group travel coming into their destination where they will provide the awesome and amazing on-the-ground activities experiences, from the basic nuts and bolts of what your arrival experience looks like to the most amazing evening events. That's all gone. That's not happening. We can, in some places, we can meet with groups of 5 people. And in some cases, they're looking at, right now, Australia is looking at how can you put a 10,000 person event into a 40,000 person stadium. Again, not good math when it comes to business, but that's the reality that we're dealing with. So we've seen some really interesting, things. We've seen companies. There's a company, I will not remember the names of these companies, but, an event company in New York that flipped to doing event sanitation services. And
wow. Oh my gosh.
And so
I got so excited. I lost my earbud. That's so clever though, if you think about it, because, it might seem totally different than what they did before, but it's something that they can help with. And they've got the people and the things in place, I'm sure, with a little bit of just some thought put into it, they're able to reconfigure. And
they had some people who said, no, we're event planners, we're not cleaners. And they're like, okay, great. Well, then thanks very much. It's been really great working with you. But what we need right now is people who are willing to take on this new task, because this is the only way we're going to stay in business.
Right.
So they've found people, obviously, who can fill those positions. We've seen companies that have gone really heavy into logistics services. So, whether it's food delivery or, things like that. We've seen some great examples. I know Jacqueline Bernstein and some of their access team in New York, they've been doing, packaging up feel good and care packages for frontline workers and delivering those in New York. We've seen companies literally from Africa to South America who have just basically said, this model, goodbye. I love that company. That was a great company for 20 years. It's not working right now. I need to work with Kiki. And so they're dissolving 2 companies and forming a new, smaller, streamlined company focused on services of need right now. Yeah. So it's happening everywhere.
I'm definitely seeing that too, where, you're such a connector. I've known you we've been friends for years, and, everyone in the events industry. And I am curious about, where you've heard people reaching out, and maybe those partnerships or maybe those collaborations haven't been sort of established yet, but they're in the process. I know that there are several conversations that I'm seeing, and this Facebook user says, completely agree to hear. Yes. But I've been hearing from people who are saying, I need to offer this new service. Do you do this in a way that I have not seen in the past? And I know what that is that it's this drive now where we're all kind of trying to adjust to, I'm going to say it, the new normal, and to figure out how we can best move forward together and, keep our shirts and stay in business. And so I'm just curious, are you hearing that from the people around you? Because I definitely have seen an uptick in my own life.
Oh, no, absolutely. I think, you're right. It is about, what can we do that makes sense right now? I've seen some really, interesting things. You and I were talking about, for example, the virtual table, and they've been creating these really interesting biweekly events by donation, and bringing in some really fabulous musical performers. But all the money that they're getting, they're not keeping it. They're donating it to the musicians, because they know that those musicians are having the hardest time right now, because if you can't perform anywhere, then you can't make a living. Right. So I've seen, cellists from La Scala and, some really amazing performances you wouldn't otherwise have access to, because they're thinking, it's not even that they're thinking outside the box, because I hate that term, because there's no box. So literally there is no box. And now not only is there no box, there's nothing, there's no box, there's no ball, there's no triangle. So it is about having to rethink. And, we're seeing so many of our hotel friends, being furloughed or laid off or changed DMOs as well. And so how can they take those sales skills? And so we're seeing, people taking skills where they've been selling hotels or destinations for years, who are now selling technology, because technology is something that we need right now.
Yeah.
So it really is about thinking about, what do people need right now? We're seeing so much education. Every association has opened up their education for low cost or no cost, including certifications in many cases, so that as we do come back, and we're starting to see Asia is coming back slowly, and Australia is reopening, and New Zealand is doing events, and some European countries are now welcoming in other people slowly, and from very specific sort of travel bubble places. Germany has said we can have trade shows of up to 1,000 people. So you look at that, hired hotel professionals to help me sell services and tech for victory, and they're performing amazingly. You know what? Exactly. It's about how do we readapt our skill sets. And I think the hardest part is getting over ourselves.
Yes. Yes. Isn't that always the way though? Whether it's our ego or whether it's this mindset that we figured out a groove that feels comfortable to us and something different feels uncomfortable, pushing past that so that we can find something that's going to actually be the thing that we need to do, that actually makes the most sense for us moving forward. That can be such a challenge. We can get very set in our ways, and it isn't always comfortable to think about, having to find new partners, new collaborations, new ways to do things, new ways to make money, all of that. And while a little change can be exciting sometimes, we're all facing a lot of change right now in very, all different areas of our lives. So what do you say about that? Because I don't know, I think a lot of people might be having a little bit of fatigue right now in worrying about so much. How do I get how is my child going to be educated? How am I going to make money? Am I safe to go to the grocery store with a mask on? We're having to rethink everything.
There's so many challenges. I don't even know where to start. Let's start with physical distancing at events, just for fun.
Yes. Okay.
Because this is my I have such a challenge with this. We have seen, as soon as things have started to open up, spikes and spikes and spikes in cases around the world. China is now a massive new hotbed. Beijing is a disaster as of yesterday and today, after having no cases for weeks. We are seeing a massive spike in cases across half of the United States, literally 25 of the 50 states, after an opening up on Memorial Day weekend, and now the protests that are so challenged by. You have one job when you go outside into those public spaces: wear a mask, social distance. What we've clearly learned is that people can't do that.
Yeah.
And it's going to mean that even as we start to open up to having live events, policing that, getting people to stay 6 feet away from each other, it's impossible.
Yeah.
6 feet away from each other so you are literally this tall. If you go fingertip to fingertip and you stretch your arms out. For anybody who didn't know that, that's like a fun fact with your kids. When they say I'm this big, they really are this big.
So, I didn't know that. I actually didn't know that.
So I'm 5'4.5", want to be 5'7". You're about 5 foot more than me, which you're very lucky. So if you and I touched our fingertips, we're still not far enough away from each other.
Wow.
So
that's a lot of space.
It's, we went from saying that we would have to have 10 square feet per person. You need to have 36 square feet per person for an event. It doesn't make sense. And I can do all of I want in a room for those people. They're still going to sit down and, in the space I've given them. And then they're going to start talking to each other and hugging and end up at the bar having a drink 2 feet away from each other. And,
I know,
and so, which has nothing to do with what we're supposed to be talking about today.
I know, but it is the way that it is
actually,
right now.
It does have a lot to do with what we're talking about, because right now what we have from a cooperation perspective is we have, the social tables and all seateds of the world creating floor plans with the PSAVs and Freemans and FMAVs and, all of those amazing audiovisual companies who've been doing these technical drawings for us for years are now having to draw these ridiculous plans that people actually aren't going to follow. And then hotels are trying to figure out what are all of the things that I need to change do people now just want to see people cleaning? So instead of me having a night crew for cleaning, I have a day crew for cleaning. And then how do I share all of that information? So we've changed our entire tourism and travel and meeting and event supply chain. And, you know, we have to be so cooperative in that. And we do have to find different ways of working. So people who used to build sets are now building plexiglass shields to put between events and dining spaces. Companies that used to do, you know, trees and plants as decor are now building trees and plants as social distancing mediums.
Wow.
Companies that have done rental furniture are now doing, you know, rental furniture with spacing bars on them. And then figuring out with hotels, how do you get those, you know, what has to come into properties to give people that distancing, but still a sense of comfort and joy. And we are having to really rethink and have those conversations. And the other thing that, you know, people aren't really talking about is what are all of those extra costs that go along with it. So, you know, we're seeing, you know, as let's use an example of hair salons are reopening up in some places. And, you know, some of them are just adding a $2 to $5 surcharge so that to cover the extra costs that they have for cleaning, and they'll give you a paper mask when you go in if you didn't bring your own. You know, the same is going to be said for events, right? So in hotels and convention centers, and, you know, so what does that look like? And I think it's, we do have to work more cooperatively than we've ever worked before, because that chain is so, it's always been integrated. Now it's integrated with this added layer, and it's it's two added layers, right? So it's the added layer of what we really need to do, and then the added layer of dealing with our own fear and anxiety and all of that goes along with it. And that was where this question started, and then totally veered off. Sorry.
Well, you know, so I had this quote that I wanted to share with everyone, and it's, "Do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends?" And I thought that from Abraham Lincoln, and I thought that was a fascinating way to look at it, because certainly, I mean, talk about being relevant to today. We're looking at you know, fighting the systemic racism that has been an issue, and this is coming to a forefront. We are definitely needing to figure out how to collaborate in new ways to maybe approach that in some different ways, so we can make change happen in a way that it hasn't happened before. And then we're also looking at a quote like that in business terms, and maybe somebody's been an enemy in the past, and or just a competitor, right? Not an enemy, but a competitor. And you know, I found myself thinking about this partnership, collaborator. How can I work with people that I don't usually work with? And immediately I'm like, ugh. You know, like I kind of demonize the competition, like I'm so much better than they, you know. And then when you get over it and you start thinking about how much stronger you could be together, there is something that's really kind of amazing when you start to think differently about what the word competitor means, and then collaborator, when you're starting to think about working together. And I have to say, and thanks whoever said that. Love that quote. I like that quote too. It's a great quote. I you know, have to say that I have a lot more work to do in that way, you know, because I like to hold on to everything that I do so closely. But when I think about my services that I provide and how they might link hand in hand with what other people, I've been talking with other consultants. I've been talking about how my services marry up with theirs. And to be honest, lately I've been thinking, you know, I should have been doing this all along. I should have been having these conversations for a long time. Why? So it might be the opportunity. This might be pushing people into new creative directions. You know,
it's going to have to, because I mean, I would say that it's not an overstatement to say that on any given day, between 30 and 70% of the people that I'm talking to don't have their jobs that they had before in the same way. Some are furloughed and will go back, but many are not. And so I've always had this sense of role versus soul. So I
Role
always
versus soul. Wait a
role
second.
versus soul.
Role versus soul. I love that.
So I've spent 25 years on the buying side of an industry that favors buyers, and less than 2 years, a year and a half on the supplier side. And it wasn't pretty over there. I'm not going to lie. And I think because I've always felt role versus soul, that I will choose to spend time with somebody or invest in somebody because of who they are as a person and not because of the job title that they have. And that's not to say that I'm disrespectful of job titles or roles as they fit into. I serve, I provide service to 2 boards, so I completely understand and very much respect what people bring in their roles. But at the end of the day, we're humans dealing with humans. Mm-hmm. And so when I've been, creative director at a DMC and have a client who is a meeting planner of a Fortune 50 company, I 100% respect the role that they're bringing and my role as a service provider to them. But at the end of the day, I'm still going to look for that human connection because that's where the magic is going to come from when I'm doing events. When I'm working with people to develop, and I think, you and I worked on Event Camp together in 2011. So when we started talking about
I know.
2011, people started talking about hybrid events being this new thing.
We were doing hybrids so long ago. I know.
We were doing hybrid when nobody actually knew what hybrid was. And it turns out a decade later, nobody knew what hybrid was.
I know.
But
I think Julius posted something about that. And he was like, you guys, we already figured this out. We've already figured this out.
We did. Yeah. Like we're getting better at it now because we have more tools. Yeah. But no, we figured out the fundamentals of it, so long ago. And so we have seen, when we did that event, it was all done with in-kind partners. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't even call anybody a sponsor. We called everybody a collaborator.
Yeah.
And everybody was, and we did these crazy like we had, you doing a session on stage, bringing together your skills as a makeup artist, as well as a technologist, talking about creativity with Deb, who is at her house in New York.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And we had that conversation with, Glenn moderating and you doing.
Deb, and then Leah. Oh my God. We had so much going on. Yeah. That was so awesome.
Yeah. So, we figured out how to make hybrid interesting a long time ago. Yeah. We figured out how to bring people together from different places a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And I think that, the more that we look at, I see Reed's question, anything that we've seen about associations collaborating on conference content.
Yes.
I think, one of our greatest challenges right now isn't associations collaborating on content. I think that our biggest, right now, we have an overload of content. Because every association is working so hard to stay connected to their communities. And SITE being one of those associations, I could go to a SITE. Our SITE chapters are so strong, like it blows my mind. But I could go to, I often do actually, there is a SITE global or chapter event I can attend every day of the week. So it's like Thursdays at 2 and Fridays at 12:30 and Tuesdays at 10. And, mm-hmm. So we kind of are. And the thing is the content is so rich. Now, times that by every association just in our industry that we're seeing sharing this amazing content. So I think that, and they're all offering the certifications, like I said, at lower reduced cost so that we all can come out of this more educated and stronger and really as an industry be stronger. It's a $1-3 trillion industry globally. So we can't take that lightly.
It is fascinating though. If we look at, because my favorite subject to talk about is usually around community and trust and all of that. And right now it's so frustrating because I also love content. I love creating content. I love thinking about content and creative ways that people can communicate with each other. Right now, you are right. There is so much content. It is for someone who loves to take in online knowledge. I have been so happy to see all of these different things that are available. Most often I would expect to be paying for this stuff. And right now, because everyone's trying to get something, it's okay to do this virtually. There's so much free stuff out there. There's so much low price stuff out there, but oh my gosh, it's been so incredible. But on the other side of it, I mean, for someone who likes information, I've been loving that. But on the other side of it, I've been so disheartened by the lack of taking advantage of the chance to bring people together in community from these online places. And that transition, which to bring it full circle, can lead people to collaborate more. But that transition from virtual meeting to enhancing your engagement for a community just does not seem to be clicking for a lot of people yet. And I'm really hopeful and like sort of crossing my fingers that that becomes the subject at some point here where people are paying more attention to that, because there are better ways to do it already. There are going to be better ways that are invented, most assuredly. And I just think that there's a lot of missed opportunity there.
You know, it's so I'm just going to do kind of do a little site brag at the moment because I'm pretty excited about what we're going to do. So the week of July 20th, we're going to have Site Week. And this started out as a request from our chapter members who said, you know, we really just want to hear, you know, this is a very disruptive time in our industry. We really want to hear more from our leadership, you know, our CEOs and our, you know, our presidents. And we said, yeah, you know, that's great. So we're going to, you know, so that started, okay, let's do a town hall. Let's not wait too long. Like, let's, you know, kind of, you know, get on this. We didn't want to get into the clutter of what was already happening in June. So decided to wait till there was a bit more of open space as summer comes and things start opening up. So we're going to do 90 minutes a day, basically. So for the first day is going to be a town hall. The second day is going to be looking at getting some information from our business recovery task forces and on our Vancouver manifesto, which is a document that was crowdsourced. First started in Bangkok with 300 people and then with 600 people in Vancouver. So crowdsourced to look at the nature, purpose, and direction of incentive travel. What came out of the Vancouver manifesto as the core drivers were sustainability, cultural, and economic impact. What's so interesting to me is that in January, when those came out, they looked very different than they do today. But boy, are they all still really important. I mean, if we look at sustainability and climate change, we look at culture and what's happening with all of the challenges around, you know, race and diversity and lack of, and all of those things that are happening right now, and economic impact. I mean, we have to face them in a different way, but those economic, you know, those are all still super key drivers. We're going to take the information that we have from that and from other surveys that we're doing, but we can't provide all of the answers. And we know that would be ridiculous to say we have a crystal ball, or, you know, ridiculous. But what we are seeing is, you know, with chapters in 30 countries around the world, what we're seeing is this amazing amount of connection and community that is being built. And so we're going to do 2 days of ideation sessions. So 90-minute ideation sessions that members and non-members, we want like the more the better. So we'll identify specific topics and, you know, which will be things like sustainability and, you know, but really it's about recovery. So it's, you know, so how can, let's get people into small groups and big groups, and let's just look at how do we create some of those opportunities and get people talking to each other. And then we'll pull that together with facilitated sessions, note takers, and we'll pull that together into reports that will, you know, drip out over the following week or so, depending on how much content we get out of it. But it is about that power of collaboration, that power of, you know, putting together DMCs from 50 countries to talk, putting together, you know, hotels from different, you know, different brands, putting together cruise lines, putting together, you know, whatever it is that really looks at how can we be stronger together, and then take some of those themes forward. You know, Reed's question again, you know, are there two associations sharing an event? Yes and no, because everyone's still trying to hang on to their own communities. You know, every association in the world right now is at risk. And maybe a grocery association is okay, but otherwise, if you are not a service that is an association that is based on providing specific continuing education credits, or are an essential service. And sometimes that's two things, same two things, right? So with it's, if you get into pharma medical, but it's you know, you're at risk because people don't have, if you don't have an income and you can't feed your family, you're certainly not going to be paying for your association membership. Let's get real.
Right.
But on the flip side of that, the association and those memberships in that community are also going to be your best route to getting that next job.
Yeah. This is the time when I seriously feel so strongly that associations can be at their best and prove just how important they are, the role that they play, because there is no other type of organization that, when it's not completely focused on profit, like if it were just business, it's driven on profit, that that would continue to exist to serve its mission. And right now, associations have the position where they can, you know, whether it is advocating for, you know, right now what ASA is doing to try to advocate for us in the United States to get, you know, more coverage and everything with that, but also so that associations can be there for its members when they are facing issues, with layoffs, with all kinds of issues. Oh, I see Mahogany is connecting, kind of.
And I think that we have, you know, sort of two pieces of that. And one of those is, you were so excited you lost your earbud again. That was very exciting.
I did. I lost my earbud. It was so exciting because Mahogany's here. Hey. We were in the middle of talking about the importance of associations right now, and the role that they're playing. And I'm so glad that you could join us so that people can see your lovely face. And Tahira, Mahogany, you both know each other. Yes.
Canadian too.
You know, so we have sort of two sides. So what I was just going to say is that we have two sides. So one is a research side. So with our foundation spends a lot, you know, really everything goes back into, you know, millions of dollars goes back into research for the industry. And so, you know, then of course, the natural question, you know, we do a joint index study with FICP and the Incentive Research Foundation. So it's incentive travel, financial insurance conference planners, and the Incentive Research Foundation, because there's so much more, which is a perfect example of a coopetition cooperating, because we have very similar membership base, but we are just, you know, two competing associations plus the research. And it just didn't make any sense to keep trying to do surveys that were getting, you know, everybody got 400 people. Well, last year we had more than 2,000 people globally, and got this amazing data that we can slice and dice all of these different ways for all of these different regions, you know. But now, of course, we're in a different time. So it's like, well, you know, is that something that we don't do? And everyone has said, no, this is now actually the most important time for us to do this. But, you know, we work with Oxford Economics to do this study, and like, let's really look at what is the right data for right now that we need to be collecting, you know. So we'll continue with that. And I think that we need to have, especially when we start to look at things like government grants and support, we have to have that research and that data to back it up. And so that will continue. And then the other part, as you said, is community, right? I mean, it's just absolutely.
Well, that is the perfect opportunity to actually introduce our speaker, Mahogany, our guest, Mahogany. And I'm so glad that you were able to join us. I was crossing my fingers. And I want to just share a little bit about Mahogany, who, you know, she had the last minute thing arise, but she's here now. And, you know, we had a discussion, Mahogany, about talking about how competitors can become compatriots, how people who in the past may have had reason to not want to work together in this environment may find that it's the best idea for them to do so. And certainly what Tahira was talking about is identifying, you know, ways where if it's something like where it's data that can help an industry, it makes sense for certain people, certain organizations to come together and work together. Why do you think now is a particularly good time for people to start exploring? And maybe what are some examples that you've seen?
I'll have to say, I mean, for us, obviously things started to snowball back in March, April, when we seen some of our colleagues lose their full books of business.
Oh yeah.
So it really became a chance to maximize what you have. I mean, being an employee of a convention center, we were fortunate enough that we were not all laid off, but at the same time, our counterparts were laid off in different places. And then it was a chance for us to really look at what we actually liked, what we didn't like, and then see how we can, well, I was calling it adding to your bench strength, so that you could start to find people who complement what you do or complement what you're looking for without losing that momentum in the time. Yeah. So we didn't know how long. We still really don't know how long we'll be in this state, but we do know that we wanted to continue with what we're doing. So
what are some
others make sense?
So what are some things, and I was asking to hear this earlier, but I'm curious what you might say too. What are some like, I guess, hallmarks or, things that traits you can look for in order to know that it's going to be a good collaboration? What are some of I'm looking for hallmarks. Hallmarks is the word that keeps coming to mind of a positive experience for a collaboration.
Absolutely. For me, I know the best collaborations that I have been personally a part of have been those where we share core values, but we don't necessarily share the same skill set.
Yeah.
I mean, I did learn this the hard way, and I will say this probably 5 or 6 years ago. I don't even know if Tahira actually remembers this, but I had partnered with someone who I thought was the epitome of event planning. And she brought this skill set, which I felt was a bit more than mine, and thought that collaboration would be absolute king because of her experience. And then what I found throughout the process is that although we shared too much of the same experience, and that we butt heads, we didn't actually complement each other because we literally brought the same skill set to the table. So we were still missing sort of that extra piece that would have made the collaboration even better. So, I mean, I have had examples of where it works well. I mean, part of being in the Dahlia Plus team, if I want to use that as an example, each of us bring an additional skill set to the team. Yeah. And being able to work with others who we understand the value, how we work, how we operate, and also that creative fun side. But we also respect each other's gifts and abilities. And that if we're talking about a specific topic, that's who we go to, or we sit in our own zone of genius.
That's such a sensitive balance. And I mean, I can say that through the work that I do with Tahira International, that's a good example kind of where everyone comes together and different people have different strengths, but we're all kind of known for doing the same type of strategic consulting. And I've seen it work really well there, which is refreshing to be able to say. But oh, so often have I been in a situation where that has not been the case. I'll never forget, and this is a little bit different because I was speaking with somebody else. We partnered up to speak about something. And I don't know if you guys can identify with this, if you've been in the same situation where in the middle of the workshop or presentation, you discover that you and your peer that's up there with you have completely opposite philosophies about certain items. I can remember talking about social media. I was speaking with somebody who was representing the PR side of things. And she was giving advice that I would never give. I was like, it's the opposite. It's the total opposite. And thinking, oh my gosh, I'm in big trouble. Like, what am I doing? So how can you avoid that? I mean, how can you, I guess, more communication?
I'll say that's a tricky one. I have definitely been in that situation. And I clearly remember being on stage and actually adding a random caveat to my portion.
Yeah.
To say that is an exceptional point that you bring up. So, but not everyone follows the same process, mentality. I literally just threw in that I was Canadian, so it makes it sound.
It's okay. I'm Canadian. Yeah,
So, I mean, I had restructured it in that sense, but from that, I definitely learned to ask more questions.
I think that's.
Because I didn't ask those questions of the co-speaker. I knew we were similar in content, structure, and what we wanted to present.
Right.
But I should have asked them more questions on their approach to make sure that I didn't put myself in that position that actually could have caused a lot of legal issues for the content that they were actually teaching.
Yeah, and you can come into that when you're collaborating from as a contractor, where you've partnered up as a team, and you have your subcontractors. And I've definitely worked with people where either they disagreed with me or I disagreed with them, and the project was not going to go the way that either I'd intended or they intended, simply because we just were not seeing eye to eye on the overall concept, right? And that's a horrible feeling. So I can imagine when we're talking about collaboration here, we're talking about partnerships. Can you imagine, thinking that you've got an understanding and then ending up in a situation where it's like, yikes, this is not what I thought it was. I don't know. Tahira, have you ever been in that? You're like perfect.
We've all been in that situation. Oh my goodness, no. And I think it's about understanding, like you said, it's a value match, but it's also, it's your fundamental values, but it's also understanding what value other people are bringing to the team.
Yes.
And actually appreciating that, and understand, because you don't always need to agree on everything. That would actually be super boring. It should, you should be able to have a feisty dialogue with somebody. But it is about respecting respecting the time other people are bringing, respecting the skills they're bringing, and again, just being able to have a conversation about that. Right. I think it's really important. We've all been in situations that you're just thinking, dear God, and I think, we all have people that we would work with again in a heartbeat, Kiki.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we all have people that you're just like, I'm sure that there's people out there who would say that they would love to work with me, just as I'm equally sure there would be people who'd be like, I'm never working with her again.
Same.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's, what? Probably if somebody doesn't want to work with me, it's probably pretty mutual.
Right.
So, and that's okay. And I think that that's part of understanding as you go into this coopetition, cooperation, collaboration phase, that we have to be partnering with people right now to get through this and recover. We have to be, choosing those, sometimes they're chosen and sometimes they're not chosen. Sometimes they're chosen for you. If you're the end client, you could very well choose two companies that don't really want to work with each other, but they will because they both want to work with you. That's also part of, managing events. And I usually find if that's the case, that it's actually good because everybody then really brings their best to the table because, they want to, everybody wants to ultimately be, a great contributor to an overall success. So that's important. So,
well, and that is a wonderful way to transition into the last question for today, which is, how do we ensure that a collaboration is win-win for everyone, for both or all parties that are involved? And so, Mahogany, I'm going to throw that over to you.
For me, what I've found is that I have to truly be honest and upfront in a collaboration of what my expectation and end result will truly look like. If we cannot agree on that, doesn't necessarily mean you even have the option to not collaborate, but it would mean that you would have to rethink how this collaboration is going to move forward and really have those strong conversations to make sure that you're protecting not only yourself, but the relationship too. Because what I found, at least for myself, is that when I didn't properly protect what would be my reputation as well, it didn't go well for the client. I mean, the client at the end of the day sees it. An event, I mean, you can say it time and time again. If one part of the event doesn't go well, we all don't look good. It's not about, whether or not AV worked or design worked or this worked. If we're not cohesive, then you're all part of that project that essentially is a failed project.
Yeah.
So really, really honing in on what a win would look like for me, what a win would look like for them, and then making sure that we can meet, either completely agree or meet somewhere in the middle where we will both be happy with what win looks like.
Tahira, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that sounds great.
I think it's so hard, though, to avoid the platitudes. It's like, I think and I'm speaking from probably the flaws that I know in myself. One of the things is that I play the diplomat, which is a nice way to say I try to make everybody feel good about what's going on. And then later, because of that clarity is maybe missing sometimes. And, where I might have seen a red flag or let something pass by, I almost always regret not getting clarity around something or specifying what I was meaning during a previous conversation. And so in an effort to make everybody feel good, it ended up being something where it wasn't optimal. It wasn't the best that it could have been. We have establishing and maintaining relationships, keeping those who align with your associations. That's a great comment, Facebook user. Thank you so much.
That whole you have to sign into StreamYard first tricky bit of, virtual meetings so that we can see who those Facebook users are.
I know. I always like going afterwards and seeing the mystery. They're like, oh, it's Bill. Oh, it's this person. I cut you off.
No, I cannot remember at all what I was going to say now. So.
Oh no.
So I think that, you're right though. So one of after we did event camp a million years ago in that, hybrid, hybrid event that nobody remembers, Judy, who had built with Shauna our game. So we created this game that showed how easy it was to create a sustainable event. We had, 1,763 acts of green from 200 people. I mean, it was amazing. That was truly a collaboration. And, Judy gave me really the only job title that I've ever really loved, which was a Dream Wrangler.
Oh, yes.
Which was really that ability to have a vision and then to carry it forward. And when we look at, when you're saying you get that little thing where you're like, oh, I could have done that. I'm still not perfect at this, but I really do try. I call it my event stinct. That feeling in your stomach where you're just like, oh, shouldn't have let that happen. So now I just try to really listen to that little thing in my stomach before we get to the event actually going live. Because every time that I've had that and I don't do something about it,
you always regret. Yeah.
Always. Right. So I think it's trusting ourselves, and whether that's where you can just see that there's, a collaboration that's not really going well. On the flip side, I've had amazing, I had this, I produced a technology summit for 3 years. And for 2 of those years, we worked with a company in Vancouver called Inventin. The producer that worked with me the closest, Sarah, she has her company now is Space at Work. So she really has this amazing ability to envision actually how space is going to function. And she's the only person that I've ever worked with who we would go into a meeting and she would be ahead of me on thinking about something. But I remember taking her with me. So I had chosen the company that we would be working with to build out our exhibit, which was not a traditional exhibit company. It didn't look like a traditional exhibit. There was no pipe and drape. There was no hardwall. There was no octonorm. It was this open space, these crazy tiles, this phenomenally complicated system. But I remember sitting down to do that first introduction and then just watching the energy, like you could just see it arcing over the table, and when you have those moments where I was just like, I don't need to think about, we were producing it, the event group from 2,000 to 5,000 to 8,000 people. And so I had a lot of other things to focus on for the success of that event. But as soon as I saw that little arcing happening, I knew I was not going to have to worry about that piece of the event at all, you know. And I would be, you know, I get this random 3 a.m. thoughts, and I'd send like a message or whatever, and she'd be like, "Oh, I thought about that, and here's how I was going to address it." I was just like, "What?" You know. So it was like having a twin brain that I miss desperately to have every day, because it's not very often that you get. And so, you know, when you get those golden relationships and have those opportunities, like hang on to those for your life. I mean, it's, you know, as you said at the beginning, Kiki, you and I are good friends, and we get to do these occasional collaborations, but every time that we do, they're magic. You know, because there is that alignment and that thinking, and that, you know, that we always have this vision that's just a little bit beyond what it should be, so that we have something to reach for. And I think that that's what we're so blessed to be able to do in this industry, and what's so fun to even just over, you know, from March until now, to watch how people have exponentially involved digital experiences that could be truly horrendous into something that you're just like, oh, I want to be part of that. And that, you know, we're so fortunate to have so thousands of people around the world who are invested in it in different ways. And so it's about finding those people that you can collaborate and cooperate with and change the trajectory, because we're a long ways to go still between post-pandemic.
That's so true.
And, you know, we've got post-pandemic, pre-vaccine. We've got I'm going to go with a good solid year before we're doing events of any size, and then hopefully hybrid continues beyond that, because hybrid allows us to extend our reach so much beyond.
Hybrid's a good idea no matter what, right? We were pushing to do hybrid for a long time for a reason, and this is being more inclusive. There are so many reasons why this is a good idea. But for today, I'm so thankful that both of you were able to join me. I got both. I got 2, and I was planning on 1, so it was great. To talk about turning from being competitors to being collaborators, to being compatriots, and trying to solve these problems together. If people want to reach out to you, if they want to read more, if they want to learn more, if they want to follow what you're doing, what's the best way for them to reach each of you? Mahogany?
I'll have to say LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the best way to reach me.
Okay. All right. And I will have Mahogany's contact information for LinkedIn, the link in the show notes afterwards. Tahira?
Same. LinkedIn's, you can always find me on LinkedIn. You know, I talked about Site Week, like check it out. We're going to have some information up on Site Global, and you know, we want as many people ideating as possible. This is, you know, we're looking to change the trajectory of an industry. More brains can't hurt with that. So
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. You know, the thing is we have some very unusual circumstances we're living in. However, this is an opportunity for us to figure out new ways to solve these new problems together. And because of the way that bringing new people into any kind of problem-solving activity can make our brains work in new ways, that's going to be exciting. We're going to come up with some amazing new ideas. And with that, I want you to think about that. And join me next week, next Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to talk with humorist, journalist, and actor Mo Rocca about the role of humor during difficult times. And until next time, everyone, I hope you keep learning every day, because of, as Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Have a